Good evening. My name is Ashok Kamath. I am from the IIT Alumni Center in Bengaluru. Welcome to the 23rd webinar that we've been hosting every Saturday since April the 18th of this year. It's early morning for those in the US and perhaps later on in the evening in time zones beyond us. So wherever you are, look forward to you enjoying this, fascinating webinar that we are going to present to you today. Completely different topic from our earlier ones, but so much relevant in these troubled times. You keep reading about the Hampi temples being inundated with water over the past few days, and you wonder what's going to happen to it. And I think some of the answers come from this wonderful panel we have. Our speakers today, Professor Shantanu Chaudhary, Director of IIT Jodhpur, distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, and of course with his BTech and PhD from IIT Kharagpur, I believe, and spent time at IIT Delhi and as Director of CIRI in Pilani. And the usual honors for an accomplished person, member of INAE and so on, and multiple patents and peer-reviewed papers to his credit. Along with him, we have Anupama Malik, who co-founded Vizara Technologies. And as I was reading up about her, I found that she expresses herself in three very interesting ways. She calls herself a serial CEO, a girl geek, and a Zen creator. So perhaps you will have to explain to us what that means, Anupama, as we go along. And finally, we have Dr. Vijay Chandru, no stranger at IIT ACB. He did a talk on genomics, I think, a couple of years ago. And he was also early this year in February, when we had the IIT Industry Conclave 2020, he was part of the biotech panel. So he's no stranger to us. Vijay is the founder of Strand Life Sciences, best known for that in Bangalore, amongst many, many other things. And today's topic will be about how do we use technologies to preserve our digital heritage. I think there are 38 World Heritage Sites in India, 30 of them cultural, 7 I think are natural, and 1 is what they call mixed criteria. So I suppose it's a combination of the two. And I think we have applied to UNESCO for an additional 43 sites. We don't know how many will come through. And I think these are all sites we need to preserve for future generations in some shape and form. And we'll hear about that today. With that, I hand over to Professor Chaudhary. I think Vijay wanted to do an introduction to the topic. So why don't we start with you, Vijay?
Ashok. Thank you, Ashok. I'm very happy and honored to be here to moderate this talk. I just thought I'd start off with a couple of minutes of introduction to this idea and the history of digital heritage. In the mid-90s, when the World Wide Web becomes real, I think is when the interest in digital heritage begins. And the early interest is, of course, from museologists. And, there's a book called The Wired Museum by Catherine Jones Garmel that comes out from the American Association of Museums in 1997 or so. And that's really sort of the start of this idea of digitally presenting heritage. A decade later, there is a review of the decade of progress in digitization, and a book by Cameron and Kenderdine on theorizing the emergence of digital cultural heritage is published by the MIT Press. So this is about 2006. And of course, Sarah Kenderdine, one of the authors, is no stranger to India. She has been involved in a project called Place Hampi, and has been a friend and a guide to those of us who have ventured into this idea of placing heritage in digital space. With that, maybe I'll hand off to Professor Shantanu Chaudhary to to lead us on the journey that we've been on in India for maybe about 10 years now in this placing heritage in digital space. Over to you, Shantanu.
Thank you, Vijay and Ashok, for introducing us, and thanks to IIT Alumni Center, Bangalore, for giving us this opportunity to talk about digital heritage. This journey has been a pretty long. For a while, we had been into this space, and what is very, very important is that when we are looking at this heritage, we typically talk in terms of what we see in the physical world. But what is important is that we are looking at these things now in actually the digital space. And I just start with a video, which possibly summarizes that what I shall talk about. So this was a combination of holographic projection, 3D digitization, and 3D printed replica of the temple, and the video played on it. The heritage presented in the digital space. This is exactly what I would like to talk about today. We know that our heritage, both tangible and intangible, are at real risk of being eroded from our physical and mental landscape due to a variety of reasons. And digital technology offers obviously an avenue for sustainable existence or sustainable maintenance of these heritage artifacts, and we can actually continue to remain, enjoy, and understand our heritage in the digital space. And the representation of these in digital space also provides a new way of understanding of our heritage. This is the key aspect what we would like to address now. Now, if we talk about cultural heritage in digital space, the first thing is representation of these heritage in digital space. Obviously, for archaeological sites, we shall have 3D and 2D imaging. We shall have images of 2D artifacts like documents, manuscripts, paintings. 3D artifacts like coins also digitized in a similar way. Handicrafts, textiles, 2D and 3D imaging. But all these imaging techniques cannot be standardized routine imaging. Based on the nature of the data, we require specialized technology for having the heritage data in digital space, which is a careful replica of what is there in real life. Intangible heritage like performing arts and its complete richness, putting into in the digital space is a different challenge. But more than that is the knowledge. The knowledge about these heritage artifacts is something which is fundamental and which requires a structured ontological representation, which is completely different from that of a standard knowledge representation mechanisms. So therefore, fundamentally what we are talking about is structured and unstructured data which represents our cultural heritage. And this leads us to the problem of big data and networked data. So changing technology profile is actually enriching representation of the heritage in digital space, computational imaging where we use variety of optics and computing based on these optical data is providing us with a very rich and diverse mechanism of capturing images. Augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality is providing us a different kind of mechanisms for experiencing this heritage. And AI is omnipresent today, and here also it has a key role. Machine learning, quantitative and qualitative simulation, digital twin and IoT linked with AI is presenting a different phase of digital heritage today. In fact, quantitative and qualitative simulation is something which is coming up in a new way today because these are also helping us how these heritage artifacts were really conceived and the functional role that they played, can we simulate and understand them? And digital twin is also the similar representation of these artifacts. And all these in a data-driven fashion are helping us to understand our heritage in a different context altogether. So key issues are what? This domain knowledge representation, the digital data representation, the way we communicate these things, and more than that is computational analysis and interpretation of these data. In fact, this digital heritage and this computational way of looking at these different cultural aspects has given rise to a new discipline also, digital humanities. So digital heritage and digital humanities are today linked in terms of the computational analysis and interpretation that this huge volume of data provides us an opportunity to do. What I shall start with digitalization of intangible heritage. Particularly if we look at drama, music, and dance. It's the most challenging art form for representation and preservation as well as that of digitalization. They are mostly living heritage. They are typically linked with performers and their custodians, and often it's propagated through undocumented legacy. Therefore, what we need to record audio, video, text, as well as individual variations. We need to record and store contextual knowledge. Here the question comes, how do we encode those contextual knowledge and how we ensure usability of that contextual knowledge? So preservation of a digital representation of heritage objects provides us different way to look at them, analyze them, understand them. Provides us mechanisms for computational study of art forms and unique opportunities to represent these cultural objects, maybe through virtual walkthroughs, through time-lapsed representations. As an example, we shall look into an ontology-based digital preservation, a case study of Indian classical dance. Specification of conceptualization is what is called ontology. And therefore, ontology-driven preservation of Indian classical dance in digital space is a representation of the conceptual perspective of the dance and its manifestation. Obviously, it offers a multifaceted, rich domain for digital representation and computational analysis. So therefore, looking at these art forms from a computational perspective is something which this digital heritage and as well as digital humanities offers to us. So if you look at dance, so we have different contexts and perspectives. There can be dancers of a particular form of art. There are different styles, and we have the music associated with dance. If you take simple example of say Bharatanatyam, it has its history. It has different postures which actually define the grammar of the dance. There are performers who are gives the variations and the creative interpretation of these dance forms. There are hand gestures, mudras. There are different instruments which are linked with the musical performance with these dance forms. And if you look at, these are also linked with your sculptures at different temples. So you understand dance also in the context of these heritage archaeological sites. And you have the grammar, and which talks about the different formats of the gestures, and you have performers who are also linked with it. So it's a multifaceted information space, multifaceted knowledge space. So therefore, if we deal with such a kind of intangible art form, and we need to do what? What is the functional features of dealing with that in digital space? We need to create this representation of this knowledge, what we call ontology creation, where semi-supervised learning, which is being talked about in the space of AI today, becomes an applicable technique. Classification and automated annotation of the different dance forms presented to it. The key issue is that if a dance form is presented to that system, is it truly belonging to that art form? It is truly an Odissi or Bharatanatyam. So these comes in probabilistic reasoning, and along with it, we have contextual browsing, which provides for a knowledge-guided exploration of this data. So these are typical computer science problems which gets intensively linked with the analysis of the dance form when we're looking at. These are also equally applicable when you are dealing with drama as a dance form, even music as a dance form. So this is a typical system architecture what we can look at, that of a dance form, that I learn ontology. I learn ontology through a process of manual annotations and the prior knowledge captured from the variety of texts that describes a dance, including Natya Shastra. And so it gives me an opportunity of semi-supervised structural learning to build up the ontology. That's a very interesting research problem to look at. Then once we have the ontology, this can be also augmented with a human input, so expert knowledge is not getting ignored over here. And it provides a conceptual browsing interface. So somebody wants to do a deep study into it, a scholarly study of dance forms, this kind of system can really be much of help for him or her. And at the same time, this also encodes the knowledge, like its manifestations and performances. Now, how do you build a conceptual model? I said that ontology is specification of conceptualization. And from this context, if we look at how do I describe the concept of pranam posture in dance form? So it's an abstraction of certain percepts, because pranam is not done in the same way under different conditions. I have shown here in the picture the variations even through mudra, how the pranam comes up. But the perception of pranam is representation as a gesture. And if I talk in terms of computer vision, I can build up today using deep learning techniques a pranam gesture recognition system, which can work on this variety of these pranam gesture and give me that abstracted description of it as a pranam gesture. Obviously, from a computer vision point of view and a context, it's a highly challenging and interesting problem. And then when I represent the whole ontology, the ontology is actually representing the relationship of different concepts. So a simple example is a concept. Say, I've just illustrated simply that Indian classical dance, Odissi, is a form of Indian classical dance. Odissi has got associated with a dance form, has got associated with the music. And this audio has got some typical stylistic characteristic which can be represented by set of features extracted from this music. And we have these visual features, and visual representations can be in terms of examples and can be also in terms of the recognition model that has been learned given these examples of pronoun. So therefore, if you look into it, my multimedia ontology represents the relational link between the individual elements of the dance form, and individual elements of the dance forms are represented through multimedia features, and my deep learning or machine learning techniques is enabling me to recognize those multimedia features from raw data. Now, this whole representation scheme is through a multimedia ontology language, MOWL, that we designed as part of our research work. So this enables us to representation of the things in a different ways. See, if we talk about that, what is the definition of pronoun? Now we can break down definition of pronoun as a sequence of gestures. So I need to recognize each component gesture and also the sequential nature of the gesture. So it can be represented in a temporal sequence, and I would like to recognize the temporal sequence to actually identify a particular mudra. And therefore, the sequence of these mudras and combination of these mudras actually represent a particular choreographic form. Now, the other very interesting issue in this context of dance is that I need multi-perspective video. In fact, whether we represent it as a multi-perspective video or not, but I need video from multiple cameras. And therefore, from a computer vision context, I'm looking at analysis and interpretation of video coming from multiple viewpoints. And that enables me to represent dance in digital form. And this kind of knowledge analysis and knowledge-based mechanism captures the essence and abstracted knowledge which is embedded in the dance performance. And therefore, if we now talk in terms of classification of an element of dance, it can be converted into a reasoning engine. And what we did through our MOWL is a belief network structure embedded in the knowledge representation scheme for recognition and classification of each dance forms. So, interestingly, if you look at, I can have a standardized collection of this dance form representation of its knowledge, that knowledge generated through a semi-supervised learning scheme. And hence, if I'm using it for the purpose of teaching dancing to students, as the students perform, I can use computer vision to classify and identify whether the performance is correct or wrong through an automated system. And it also becomes a kind of a standardized representation of the dance forms and mudras. So therefore, this dance form, we are creating a version of it in the digital space. So everything put together, this is the whole picture. I have a perceptual model. Perceptual model is translated into a multimedia enriched ontology representation. And from there, we have what we call an observation model. Observation model is essentially a belief network through which we can classify different elements of performance to find out whether they are being performed correctly or not. This is browsing. This is an annotation tool snapshot, because for any kind of machine learning applications, semi-supervised application, I need to do annotation. This is a kind of annotation tool that we had developed. And this is a browsing tool, tool, and it's snapshot of that for a particular dance posture. I can find out the similarities. I can find out variations by other dart artists. I can even try to get a similarity with other art forms from Odissi to other. Is there a similarity in the mudra? And is the meaning of the mudra similar or something else? So comparative study of dance forms can also be enabled when we have all these things in the digital space. So digital space is not just for preservation, but also better understanding of this dance, different art forms, particularly performing art forms through computational models. Next, we shall look into archiving in digital space of tangible and intangible heritage of Hampi. And this work was done by a DST-sponsored project where, in fact, a huge number of scholars, not only computer scientists or electrical engineers, there were design faculties, social scientists, liberal arts people, all of them worked together and worked on this structured research effort. And it was a unique project supported by Department of Science and Technology. In fact, Vijay was also part of these, and about 21 institutes were working into it. It was coordinated by NIAS and IIT Delhi, and I was coordinating on behalf of IIT Delhi. So this is the story of digital making of Hampi. And we call this Indian Digital Heritage Project. What was the outcome? Outcome we got, there's a book published, Digital Hampi, Preserving Indian Cultural Heritage. It was a Springer publication. These included works on digitization of architectural relics, capturing murals and crafts, restoration of technologies, digital restoration. This is completely different from restoration in physical form, iconography, and documenting intangibles. And very interestingly, out of this whole project work, a number of startups came up. One of the startup is Visera, which actually take the technology and take it into the market in different form. Even these activities still continuing in, and this new avatar of the project, which is IHDS by DST, and DST is supporting. So these actually has started the stream of research in digital heritage in this country. So if you look back to Hampi, these are the temple complexes, which are as beautiful as it could be. And it's our responsibility to preserve them in digital space so that we can make them remain there in our memory, even if there is some physical destruction. So this capturing architectural heritage work was done by IIT Delhi, KLE Hubli, NIAS, IIIT Hyderabad, and KCST Bangalore. So laser scanning, and from laser scanning, you do point cloud model and 3D mesh model and get their representation in 3D. The other way of doing it is actually using image-based rendering. You take images, a big, huge collection of images from all possible angles. Today, you can use even drones, balloons for these purposes. And from these images, you can create 3D point cloud. In fact, that gives a cheaper way, but may not be very correct and perfect point cloud methods. But if you can combine some of these images as well as 3D scanning, which is being done by laser scanner, combination of the two, we can get very good quality digital data of these monuments that's there in Hampi. And in fact, a very large number of monuments in Hampi have been digitized through this part of the project, and this data is available today. There is also another thing is that past literature and using architectural principles, we also did what is called conjectural reconstruction. That means the things which are not there today, based on past literature and architectural consistency, can we recreate those things? And since we have the model in 3D, we can also test experimentally and numerically whether they are valid and correct or not. So it's an example where this chariot, existing stone chariot today, is the top of it is not there. And Greenlaws, this is a picture taken in 19th century, which had this top chariot, and also architecturally this was recreated, and this chariot top part was actually synthesized and made into a CAD model, and visually reconstruction happened. So this work has been done for a number of these relics in 3D digital space, and these are some of these comparisons of original images and existing pictures, and how we complement these existing pictures through reconstruction by the missing components. We reconstructed the missing components based on available instances of subtypologies, and these consistency of subtypologies enabled us to create the things which are missing. Now, what is very interesting here is that this was really a combination of digital data and the knowledge which is there from variety of text, photographs, and this is an example of data fusion by which we created a more enriched digital representation of the physical artifacts. Now, this leads to what is called providing experience of these artifacts in a different way, a new concept of what we call presence. And this presence is through virtual reality, through augmented reality, and mixed reality. And we can even create a digital twin through this presence that we can construct through the process of digitalization of these artifacts. And particularly, as I'm talking about the architectural marvels of Hampi. So, we all know about the musical pillars of Hampi. And actually, we create a 3D rendition of the same. This was work done because it's a project of multiple institutes. This was a work done by IIT Bombay, where using these haptic sensors on a 3D printed model, I can recreate the sound of these pillars produce when you actually play in the temples. So obviously I can preserve, see in this case it's very, very important that ASI doesn't allow people to touch and play on these pillars because they will get destroyed. And obviously I want to preserve this temple. So I can create a 3D replica and give the people visiting the site actual experience of the musical pillars. So the whole issue and key point here is I'm giving a different experience through a new form of presence. And that is the one way that this whole digitization enables us to express the heritage to others. So interactive browsing of mural paintings. So you know the murals were there. This is the work which was done by Vijay and his group, that we take the mural paintings and use a map, and by navigating the map, we can experience and understand the story of the murals. So this is a mural. Mural is actually, if you look into it, it's a kind of a complex pictorial expression of a sequence of events. And we need to navigate these murals to get the story out. And we developed a very nice interface for getting this story in the digital space. Now, other very interesting thing is once we study these murals, we also get to know lots of things about the social life of the time. In particular, in this case, the study was done for clothing styles and the color palettes used in the clothing. And based on that, and based on also other data, writings, literature, this NID actually worked on creating of different kinds of clothing styles. And these are the sketch, and these sketches were converted into graphical models for digital animation. And if you see this animation, you'll find that how a story about the social life is built and expressed here. There's the characters moving around in the marketplace, Birbakshi Bazaar. There's a bazaar street. So you can see this technology can also be used for animating real historical scenes and can be a very interesting teaching aid of history for the school kids and experiential learning of history. So now another very interesting thing comes up. If we now go back and make use of ontology, we can provide experiential exploration in terms of contextual space and time traversal. See, typical virtual reality-based traversal in space, tours, or fly-through, walk-through are typically associated with virtual reality. But now, if we have history, and if we have this contextual representation of history with the space, and link it up with an ontology, so this knowledge about the time and space, and with linked events are there with us, then what we can provide for, we can provide for an experiential interface for travel over space and time. And for example, if this is a kind of a temple, and I can have these hot spots over here, these navigation spots over here, and through that I can navigate. As we navigate, I can get a multifaceted experience, and this was all created. It can be contextualized with reference to the location where you are. Given a location where you are, you can see historically how the site has changed. You can see also a video of a dance which is linked to a sculpture on the temple. You can also refer to the literature which is talking about a mythological story that temple actually represent. So it's a multifaceted again experience which ontology can provide, linked with the digital representation in the 3D as well as digitization of other cultural artifacts. Next, we look at the mixed reality experiencing, and this is what subsequently Anupama will talk about more. So this is a pipeline of setting up the 3D printed version of all these architectural relics. So if you see, this is a point cloud of each temple structure. This is the point cloud of the main shrine of Hampi, and this is how it looks. And then we get into, as we call, the mesh representation. This is a 3D representation in terms of triangular mesh, and which actually opens up and gives me a completely 3D representation. I can open up and effectively I generate a CAD model of each temple structure. So the moment I generate the CAD model of each temple structure, if we take it to a civil engineer, then a civil engineer can make use of this CAD model to do analysis about the longevity of the temple. There can be measurements done on the temple, and then civil engineer can also suggest ways and means by which we can actually physically preserve the temple in a better way, and at the same time we can preserve the temple in the digital space. And there is this is a big data problem, the huge volume of meshes we need to deal with, and then we have to do a reduction of data size when we do a 3D modeling pipeline. And this is enhanced model of these mesh models for 3D printing is available. And what is very interesting is that if you see, this is after the mesh, we have done a texture mapping. With the texture mapping, when we do enhance it, the details come up, and then we do 3D printing. So these enhanced mesh models are subjected to 3D printing to get the components, and these components to put together, we create a virtual structure. These are actually digital twins of the temples that we have. And with these digital twins, we have put these realistic images over there, and you can actually realize that to what details this whole thing is put in. And the difference is in terms of texture. This is true what it is today, and this is the textured representation what we can get through 3D printing. And these are a variety of examples of them. And with virtual models, you can have interactive walkthrough in 3D. And this one is a physical model. And then you have the mixed reality experiencing on these 3D models. And very interestingly, as I'm telling that they're digital twins, I can have the real life data, real life images projected onto these 3D structures. So you need not be at a temple in Hampi, or need not be at any temple for that matter. And if it is sufficiently instrumented with camera, sitting far away, you can actually see what is happening in that temple. In fact, I have started my talk by showing how I can experience a probable dance performance in a temple in its as through a holographic projection on the 3D printed version of it. So this is an experiencing of these artifacts in a different way. And today, in the new reality, when travel is restricted and most of the time we are away from actually these tourism sites, this provides a way to experience virtual tourism and virtual experience in a different way. It is not just on the computer. It can be through physical interactions, but not being physically there at the site. So I already talked about this holographic projection. Holographic projection provides me a technology for 3D mapping, and we have actually developed and implemented a very low-cost technology by which we can do a 3D projection into these 3D models and bring these 3D temples live. Now, other important point that I want to touch upon is that how digital culture is linked with livelihood. And this is a project which we are working on now, the digital culture for livelihood. Particularly, we are looking at daris from migrated laborers, migrated artisans who migrated from Pakistan to actually India, Hindu migrants, and who have set up around Jodhpur these dari making actually workshops. And these designs are absolutely their own. And these are hand-woven rugs, and they make use of cotton, camel, or goat wool for the things. And the very interesting part of it is that we would like to do an ethnographic chronicle of dari weaving and design motifs, wave features of dari features, and actually initiate a digital marketing so that this art is saved. See, so far what we have seen is things which are already there and we are putting in digital space. This is an experiment. What we are doing is taking the live art form to digital space and to make sure they have the livelihood. And therefore, digital heritage and digital humanities can also be linked with livelihood of people. And so the computational principles is not just for algorithm design, but also for sustenance of livelihood. So this brings me to the conclusions. The digital heritage science is definitely an interesting area to explore. There are open issues and problems in the domain of multimedia technology, which can be used in this case. Machine learning and ontological reasoning in this context has open problems. And more than that, this provides a mechanism to preserve human memory in digital space. It actually preserves our heritage against all kinds of vagaries. And that's what we can work together, technologists, social scientists, as well as cultural exponents all together can take up this initiative. Thank you. Let me hand it over to Vijay for.
Thank you, Shantanu. That was, I'm sure, fascinating, and there have been lots of comments also, to that effect. So I'll ask you a couple of pressing questions that came up, and then maybe we'll switch over to the Vizara presentation by Anupama. So one question was, of course, whether there is actually any plan to have an Indian Heritage Center like the centers that UNESCO and so on maintains. Do you know of any such plans by the government or by the ministries? Yeah.
I really don't have, I do not know of any such plan, but that has been talked about at various points in time.
Okay.
And I think Anupama will talk about a number of these things that has been done today. And there will be possibly place for the time being in Science Museum. But this has been discussed at various points in time to create a center, maybe in Bangalore, maybe in Delhi, where all these can be put together, like that UNESCO site that we're talking about.
And of course, we'll also talk about the National Museum, where where some of
that
things are.
exhibition, we should talk about that gallery that we had for a while.
There was a question about Indian dance forms, but I think you answered that. The universality of sort of the ontology-based approach that you presented, you illustrated it for Odissi and Bharatanatyam, but it could really be applied to any dance form. I think one interesting question was, how do we capture sort of the emotional aspects of this heritage? I think physically and in some sense culturally, you're capturing some of this, but how about emotionally?
See, emotion gets generated through experiencing them. And if you talk in terms of emotion in performing arts, when you actually capture the facial expressions, there those emotions what are being depicted by the performance gets recorded in digital space. And there actually the variations come from individual to individual. The way the sorrow is expressed by a performer X is definitely different by performer Y. But the emotion that gets generated through experiencing history at a site, that emotion is what we are trying to convey through these digital twin creations of these sites.
Well, of course, there's also the whole development of affective computing. Yeah. And, Pushpak, I think, spoke about it earlier. So that would be also an interesting aspect to integrate here. I think maybe we should just, move to now the second part of the presentation. As Shantanu mentioned, I think, one of the very interesting outcomes of the India Digital Heritage Project funded by the Department of Science and Technology was actually translation of all the research and technologies developed and sort of moving that into a startup and making taking it to the next level. And I think to tell us that story, I'd like to invite Dr. Anupama Malik to speak to us and to show us some of the things that excite her about this new sort of entrepreneurial journey that has developed in this space of digital heritage. Thank you. So Anupama, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. And I think Shantanu sir has really summarized all the work that has been happening for the past almost, I think, 10 years. 2010 is when the Indian Digital Heritage Project actually had taken off. And first, I would like to really thank IIT Alumni Center, Bangalore, for giving this opportunity to really talk to a very enlightened audience here. Because I can see the question answers and over chat, whatever comments are coming, it can really show that people are really interested and excited about this whole journey that we have undertaken over the years. So just going back to what Ashok had said, so I just want to talk a little bit about my journey being an entrepreneur in this area, and then go on to show the Vizara slides. So first, I just wanted to say that as a kid, I think as a child, I was very enamored by the stories which are on the walls of temples. I was very, enamored by the architecture and the marvels and the mysteries that surround our tangible heritage, as well as, there is so much of knowledge in our intangibles, which is music, dance, performing arts. And all this was very exciting. And I personally wanted to be an archaeologist. And I haven't told this to very many people who know me. But I ended up becoming a computer scientist and realized that that was another, thing which really excited me. That is to create and develop software. So going back to what Ashok asked, if serial entrepreneur, meaning I had actually started a company in 1990s developing MIS applications. And worked in the industry for a period, and also then went on into academics. and started doing my PhD. So Professor Shantanu sir is my guide at IIT Delhi. I started, studying under his guidance. So artificial intelligence, semantic web, and multimedia ontology is what I had actually wanted to study and research in. And you won't believe that the database that we started working on was the Indian classical dance videos. So some of the slides you've already seen, Shantanu sir has presented. And so this became a very interesting challenge of combining art and science together, to be able to apply science to understand our own culture and heritage. And this has been a very interesting, for me, it has been the passion. It has been very exciting that I can now apply what I learn in science and technology to preserving, culture, and also to take it to people to see that what all, we really have in our heritage. So IDH project started in about 2010, and I'll talk about it in my slides. But the challenge which was given to me as an entrepreneur, which started in 2016, is when we co-founded Vizara Technologies, was to translate whatever was done as research in the IDH. And therein lies that challenge of applying scientific innovation in cultural heritage space, and build a business model and have an entrepreneurship whole concept bring to that. I think that was a very interesting challenge provided, which is what we took up and co-founded Vizara Technologies. And I still remember the first product that we really created was the stone chariot of Hampi. We were given the laser scan data. We were asked that you work with this and you create experiences with this. And the first thing we did was to create a 3D printed stone chariot of Hampi. If you allow that, I'd like to show this to everyone here. And so this is, in my hands, I'm holding literally history, because this is a true scale model of the stone chariot of Hampi. And so I'll just bring it closer. So what we, being engineers, what we did was that we also decided that why don't we show people what is inside, because this is coming from a 3D laser scan data. And typically, if you go to Hampi, you may not see what is inside this, but using this technology, I'm sure maybe some of you can see this, that there is a statue of the Garud, which is inside the stone chariot. And so we also did one more thing, that since the whole technology was how to see how this stone chariot, not how it is today, but how it used to be. So we've created another 3D printed prototype of its conjectural top. So you can now see the stone chariot, as it may have been in the past, and you actually hold this and keep it in your home. This is, part of history. This is just that it was a very exciting thing to do. And further on, we went on to create some applications around it, which I will speak of. I'd like to first start with showing an exhibition which happened in January 2020. Since our mandate given to us was that IDH products, the research outcomes have to be translated, we went on with other partners of IDH, which was, many of us who were involved. And this exhibition took place in the National Museum at New Delhi. What you will find is whatever Shantanu sir has already shown a little bit of, using 3D printing, using holograms, using mixed reality, augmented reality, various experiences were created, and this was put up in a special gallery. It was a very popular exhibition. So without further ado, I'd just like to take you and see this video. Create these installations, first laser scanning was done of the monument sites. The laser scan data was then converted into digital models, and after that the digital models were used in two ways. One was to create virtual walkthroughs, and the second one was to create 3D printed installations. Finally, everything was integrated so that you have these mixed reality installations.
They're marvellous. I mean, they bring the history of India to life.
इसको कहते हैं जलतरंग कहते हैं।
You know, it's kind of harking back to the days of playing video games. So there is a sense of adventure and discovery.
The memory of man is not very long. Paradise-like garden is how the garden has been described.
The interactivity is fantastic, the way you can see the miniature, but then you can use the apps and Siri to hear, or you can hear things, you can move things around.
Exhibits in this exhibition have been created specifically for preserving heritage. And when you digitally preserve heritage, you are actually preserving it, forever. Your monuments, your, artifacts, your sculptures, they see degradation over the years. There is a wear and tear. So your heritage is very fragile. And, you just are letting go of it if you do not do something now.
So I think after this, I do have about, Vijay, I'd just like to know how much time I have so I can present the slides, or.
Maybe we try to wrap up in about 7-8 minutes if you can. That would be great. Okay. Thanks.
So I'd just like to quickly go over these slides then. I have already spoken of how the company was formed. I mean, we have a journey which is, as I said, almost 10 years ago. We were fortunate to be incubated at my alma mater, which is IIT Delhi. Currently, we are associated with NASSCOM, and we have the vision to translate the outcomes, whatever we did with ITH, to many other monuments and sites. This is a kind of organization snapshot. You're a small team of about 10 people, and we've seen year-on-year growth. We've looked at tourism mainly, or heritage and culture as the domain, that sector that we want to work in. But currently in COVID time, obviously this year-on-year growth is not really happening. But we still are finding out and working with the government towards digitizing and also working at many different outcomes of ideas to be applied and translated. So I have already spoken of our vision that when we brought about this whole aspect of scientific innovation in heritage, we also want to talk of the science which is there in heritage. So when I'm standing at a particular monument, the whole the geometry of it, the engineering skills which have gone into it. We are talking of 15th century, where they could actually, without the tools that we have today, they were able to create these huge structures which are, if you really look at the architectural side of it, they are completely, unimaginable how they managed to do this with the whatever knowledge that they had at that time. So how to present this kind of heritage, science and engineering, etc., to children today, to the younger generation today. Also to take it to people to, change the way they, history should not be boring. Heritage should not be something that you have to really connect with. It should be something that you want to. So, when Shantanu sir showed all these aspects, I will show some of the VR experiences. So I want to be in Hampi wearing a headset. I want to be inside a temple in Hampi, and also not just in space. I want to be even transported in time. So I can create experiences which, when people wear, you could be in the 16th century Hampi as it used to be at that point of time. So I think these aspects become very exciting. So our offerings, we've already seen that they range from 3D models to holograms to VR headset experiences and AR apps. These are some of the examples Shantanu sir has shown, and this is completely laser scan data given, and then computer generated 3D models being created and in as realistic forms as possible. We've seen the room scale, so we can apply 3D printing to create these room scale experiences for people, and we can recreate the holograms, we can recreate real tours. So you could be standing next to the main mandapa of Hampi and actually experience going into the Garbhagriha. You already, I think most of it you've seen, but also what I want to tell is that the experience which needs to be created needs the storytelling. So for each of the mixed reality installations that we created, we tried to create a particular story around it. The content obviously can keep changing because that is a digital content. So when it is Kashi Vishwanath temple, we gave people an Aarti experience. We talked of the faith that brings people to that particular living temple that it is. In Ramachandra temple is beautiful carvings of Ramayan all around the temple complex. So we created a Ramayan tour for people to take while you are sitting in your house. In Taj Mahal, while it is, it's an eternal love story, but there is also the fact that the minarets of Taj Mahal, which are the 4 minarets around the main structure, have been made in a way that if an earthquake happens, these minarets will fall outside. They will not fall on the structure. I mean, to have, those architectural skills is another aspect of it that we, tried to bring in. I'll probably try and quickly show you one video of the Rani Ki Vav, which is a step well, and where you can teach the the younger generation how water conservation was always a part of our culture, and how they were at that time applied in 11th century. They had the knowledge to be able to create these step wells, which particularly if you look at, there are some aspects of water and the properties of water, which is what something which you can teach from many different apps. In fact, we've created an app around this aspect, but I may not have the time today. But anyway, these are the things we did. And in Sun Temple Konark, we created a treasure hunt game to excite the children to really experience it and play with the game controllers. These are some of the 3D printed heritage memorabilia. This is a whole range. It's available on. We in fact started creating these products out for people to buy and keep with them as heritage mementos. There's a whole range of these products. Our technical stack and pipeline that we actually use, I've already spoken of it, but there is laser scanning, 3D modeling, printing, application of computer vision, machine learning, Unity, game engines like Unity and Unreal. And this is a pipeline that Shantanu sir already, I think, has explained, so not going there. This was the first showcase for us. This was a very important event because it was a proof of concept, and the fact that Vizara Technologies, which came out just as a startup to translate, actually has the execution capability and was able to obviously work with all our mentors and all the people who helped us to be able to create this event. And we had a big validation of it when DG UNESCO, when she was traveling to India, she actually visited the exhibition and really commented that this is one of the very unique things that she has seen, any part of the world, and this is something very new and interesting. So moving away, just not with heritage, we've also worked with celebrities and people. So we created a Digital Gandhi exhibition for Department of Science and Technology. This is meant specifically for children, where you can learn about all the values and all the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi, who was such a personality in his own self, that people don't realize how it is so relevant today when he spoke of frugality, when he spoke of ecological balance, when he talked of self-reliance. And so these aspects we brought out through this exhibition, which was put up at DST. So around that, we have, there is, in fact, one of the 3D printed things that if you can see here is a statue of Mahatma Gandhi. This comes with an AR app, and you can download these apps from the Play Store and App Store. So with this 3D printed statue, you actually just use your phone or your tablet, and you get to learn so much more about him. And the children, in fact, find it very exciting to play with these digital models. I have a very quick short video which I'll show you about, for Lotus Mahal, which is one of the 3D printed heritage mementos we have. We created a small little app just to give you a little glimpse, and then I think I'll be done.
Move the camera and point it at the marker card. Pinch in, pinch out for scaling the model. Use your thumb to rotate the model. This is a true-scale digital model of the famous Indian monument, Lotus Mahal, created from laser-scanned data.
I think I'm coming to an end of, the time. So I'll just talk of our clients and partners. And we do have other offerings beyond heritage. Vizara is going to go into many different sectors, but this has been my passion to be here and, change the way that, as I said, people look at heritage, and I'll be working on this for a long time. So I think this is it in my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. And I shall just stop sharing. I created back over time.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, thank you, Anupama. I'm sorry for rushing you, but I just thought we should leave some time for discussion and responding to some of the questions as well. So I'd like to invite Shantanu also to join in now, as some of the questions may be relevant for him to answer as well. And so first of all, thank you both for lovely presentations, and also for watching the time. So we have a little time now to get into the discussions. There were a few technical questions in the Q&A box, and Anupama, one was someone wanted to know what was the gaming engine that was used to develop the 3D walkthroughs.
The Unity 3D.
Unity 3D, okay. And there was a question about how we maintain authenticity of the images. So, are there techniques like digital watermarking or various techniques that we need to essentially, tell apart which are the fakes and which are the real images, right? So,
would you want to? I mean, I would ask that. If you're really creating a digital experience, would you really want to have that difference? I mean, there is, of course, the veracity, etc., and we would normally give either a disclaimer or we would tell you about it. But I think as realistic the experience is as possible, it would be probably.
Well, from a historicity point of view and preservation, yes. I think there would be sometimes a reason to make sure that, it's not a touched up image.
Yeah, we just pitch in.
Yeah, please.
Actually, when we talk in terms of taking images, let's see, these are under different conditions. Let's say I'm taking an image of an architectural site. There, the key point is, maybe using the images, I would like to create a 3D model. There, the texture may not be important. But when I'm actually creating the visuals, then the realistic texture and photographic techniques to capture the realistic texture is very important. Now, this becomes critical when you are capturing a mural, when you are capturing a craft. The color, these color filters should be used so that original color is preserved. And imaging, preserving original pigment color itself is a challenge and a technique. And obviously that authentication has to be definitely preserved if we are doing a digital preservation of the original artifacts. That's why I in my talk, I have stated that for recording, say, any of these 2D or 3D artifacts, I need to use specialized imaging technique so that I can capture the true characters. In fact, if I do the imaging of a coin just by a 3D scanner, I won't get the details of the depth variation of the engraving. But that is a very critical element to see the coin comes from which dynasty, because the way things were, technology were there, that gets reflected in. So that detail and the resolution is extremely critical for digital preservation.
Right. Thank you, Shantanu. I think there was also a question about music, and you know, the classical music of India, of course, has such variation in frequencies, ragas, pitch, and how can so many features be taken care of? Was the question.
It's a challenge. In fact, just digital recording of Indian classical music itself is a challenge, because the capturing all the frequencies, the sensitivity, all these things comes in. But one thing is that there has been work done in the past in representation and analysis of the music. In fact, raga and raga structure can it be digitally represented? In fact, two places. One is Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata, and Sangeet Research Academy, Kolkata. They had collaborated with Dipali Nagchaudhary. She is a very well-known classical singer. She was working with computer scientists to capture these vocal patterns in digital space. And some work has happened in that space. In fact, in the second phase of IDH project, Anindya Sinha, who is a professor in NIAS, he's actually working on these music, similarity of the music across different genre. In fact, Bengali music and Western music of that time. He's working more on popular music of 18th century. And so he's doing a project on that. So the activity has started. Obviously, music is a different challenge.
Sure. Yeah. Well, there's something more more like a comment than a question, but I think it's worth mentioning that someone, I think Pradeep Prasad from the Armed Forces says that armed forces have always been the first to get to use these technologies. And in fact, many of the innovations and inventions have happened due to the needs of the armed forces. And extensively use simulators for training, etc. So I think that's very true. And many of these technologies were developed even in the West by agencies like DARPA and so on. So that's always been the case, that technology is part of a military industrial complex. So I think that we take for granted in an IIT alumni club.
To answer, yeah. See, actually, if you look at AR, VR today, a major projected consumer for AR, VR is wargaming. In fact, DRDO wargaming they're looking at, the traditional wargaming, which developed by DRDO, they don't involve AR, VR, but actually those elements are coming in, and the projected plan-wise, a major consumer of AR, VR technology would be actually defense.
We get many queries, by the way, Vijay. In fact, a lot of times we've had queries for developing content and for simulation and training, and one gets a little stuck with the hardware side of it. But there's now a lot of in India products which are coming up with like AR glasses and all. So that will really help.
Sorry, I think Pradeep has put a clarification. Is it, I think can it be used for defense was really sort of the question. Anyway, that's I think
what I answered, that AR/VR is majorly to be used in wargaming applications.
In fact, there is something called sand, sandbox, which they use in a big way. So,
sure. Okay. So let's just move on. I think there are a few more. Is there a possibility or an effort towards setting up something creative like an institute for creative technologies that apparently USC has, but I'm sure many Cal IT too, for example, at San Diego, or has been another amazing place for lots of work between technology, information technology, and heritage. But so, is there any? So you're the director of IIT Jodhpur. Is Jodhpur going to become a center for creative technologies?
If we look into it, actually, new education policy actually provides a triggering point for these. When it says that IITs also should look into performing arts, liberal arts, and these components should get into the core of this research area. So there is a possibility of such things getting developed. And what is important is that Jodhpur is hosting this technology innovation hub for AR, VR, and computer vision, which is very closely linked with heritage. And we have heritage and culture as one of the verticals under that. So if we find a positive response and indication from Ministry of Education, we obviously would be interested to look at a center of excellence of art and technology.
I just wanted to also say, Vijay, that our exhibition was visited by the Minister of Science and Technology, as well as inauguration was done by Minister of Culture. So there was a talk where they wanted to, because all that culture has is all these artifacts and thing. Whereas Science and Technology Minister was very interested in taking these and setting up a different center. Though there is talk of taking all these exhibits into the National Science Center at Delhi. But I think they are both very interested, and let's see, after this COVID situation, I think it settles down a little bit. Maybe that impetus will come again
So there is a suggestion for you, perhaps Vizara can look at this. Can you do something about Nalanda and Vikramshila universities? And so that's a suggestion, I guess. From a technology perspective, Chetan Pandit says that I think preserving music should be much simpler. Music libraries are common in the West, although their music is written down and played from written score. Are you planning a music archive? Isn't IIT Kharagpur already doing something, Shantanu?
Kharagpur has set up a center with Pandit Ajay Chakraborty, doing some study, which is actually follow-up of what I said of Dipali Nagchodhary in ISI Sangeet Research Academy in ISI Kolkata. He's doing that. And here also, as I said, as part of the next phase of the project on that music library, music collection is likely to happen. And comparative music analysis, what is very, very important, that what we are trying to look at in digital space.
Yeah, I think there was also a mention of this project called Sindhu at
IIT
Kharagpur.
So you're also connected, I'm sure, with what is going on there. There is. Are there any regulatory aspects, protection of sensitive data in this area that has come in? For example, drone pictures or drone views.
The thing is, that whatever is Archaeological Survey of India talks about, but not really secrecy of the data, but what they are sensitive about, the use of imaging equipment, make sure that these sites are not damaged by any means. And I think that is what is extremely important for us as well. And they have done, the ASI has also done digitization of some of these sites which are under ASI control. But they have not really gone into this kind of modeling, use of the data, etc. They have just done and archived it. And in many cases, tracking of that data also becomes a challenge.
Right. Shantanu, do you want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the next phase of IHDS and because you're also overseeing that, and right? So,
yeah, next phase of IHDS is actually has got certain new aspects. One of the aspects being touched upon is actually this water system. Here we have talked about performing arts. We have talked about this architecture, but see, some of these utilities, the engineering systems, which were developed, and study of those engineering systems, that has come in as a component in the next phase of the project. There is another aspect which we are addressing is how do you have a digital preservation of ecological heritage? Okay, Manjuli Island as an example. Then also the living spaces. See, traditional living spaces are something which is disappearing. Everything is getting into a westernized structure. So how do we study and preserve the traditional living spaces? These are the three very distinct aspects of the next phase of the project.
I guess there's a question from Rohan Garg about whether this technology can be used for training new pilots with real-life simulations, metro and railway drivers. And this reminds me, actually, in the mid-90s at IISc, when we ran the Perceptual Computing Lab, we actually used to build VRML training systems for oil tankers and for handling at docks and so on. Yeah, so this has been going on for a long time, I think.
In many industries, it is almost a standard. Many industries.
VR and as well as AR today. So you actually now can do remote, help to people. So that is new. VR has been there for a long time in simulation, but even with AR now, this is
sure.
Because I think network bandwidths.
Also, what is very interesting is that if you look at today, many of the manufacturing industries, they're using VR for training their labor force.
Right. Right. Anupama, I think again back in the 90s when the first 3D printers, IISc again had the first 3D printing lab in 1994, 95. How has 3D printing really arrived now? I mean, in what ways we had to pay, I think, $250,000 for a Stratasys machine, and it was, closely guarded sort of piece of equipment. But today it's all over the place, right? Yeah.
You can have a 3D printer in your house. So this new FDM technology which has come up, where you also have filaments which are available from 500 rupees to 1,000 rupees. And these printers, and most of the children now, there are kits by which you can actually make a 3D printer at home first, and then have a 3D printing going on. I think the hardware and the technologies have really, really progressed over time. And so we have a range from Stratasys having very expensive printers still to these at-home 3D printers. So I think it's a very exciting times.
I think maybe time for one last question, and then we'll hand it back to Sushila and Ashok. And I think here, the question is really about, in some sense, how can the citizenry, the common man participate in this kind of work? Crowdsourcing of information, how can all of that be put together? It may be local heritage, not visible to UNESCO and so on. So is that part of the plan?
It's part of the plan. I missed one point that in this second phase of the project, actually one of the centers is setting up a crowdsourcing platform by which we shall collect the samples. Anybody will be open to anyone who can contribute images and with his identity of the locations and other stuff. And also putting up a crowdsourcing platform for annotations. So that activity is part of the second phase, because it's very, very important that it's not that all monuments are under ASI control, and there are many local monuments, local artifacts, local crafts, which goes unnoticed. And the documentation of that is extremely important. And that's why crowdsourcing initiative has been taken.
Sure. Maybe on that note, I will pass the baton back to Sushila. We're at 6:26, and I guess I was told that that was the right time to
Thank you. Thanks very much, Vijay, for that lovely holding that the whole talk together so beautifully. And many thanks to Professor Shantanu Chaudhary and Dr. Anupama Malik. This, I think, was one of the most exciting talks that we have had. It's been a very interesting, completely eye-opening discussion today. You know, at some point of time in our life, we all ask the question, who am I? And in some sense, we are all the product of the cultural and social context that we belong to. And our heritage is the sum total of all of that. So it is so important that we preserve, and much has been said about the need to preserve our heritage, preserve our culture. And Professor Shantanu talked about it's not just culture, monuments, and so on, but also our ecological heritage. And you know, interestingly, 3 talks ago, when Professor Martin Rees had spoken, he had brought up this concept of the digital twin and the need of preserving our ecological heritage as well. So it's very interesting that we have this thread that is following through in our webinars. And I think, given the importance of all of this, I think it is so, you know, the work that has been presented today is absolutely important, so very important. And Professor Shantanu Chaudhary talked about a lot of things. He talked about the many uses of all of this work, understanding the social context of life at that point of time, and therefore history, and understanding of our history from before. How were these artifacts thought about? How were they conceptualized? How were they created? How were they actually used? And then how do you preserve whatever is left of the physical structures, the rate at which we seem to be pulling our world apart? You know, is there some way to reverse that and start talking about how do we preserve what is already there? Maybe, like you said, the top of the chariot. And Anupama, I had goosebumps when you held that stone chariot up, you know, having visited the Hampi, and then I see this, oh. So, you know, it's so nice to just see that whole thing fall in place and being given the respect that the artisans of the time deserve to be given. We talked about many other uses. Virtual tourism was one of those. You know, we often say, "Abhi aisa kaam dekhne ko kahan milta hai," right? When you look at a piece of a textile or whatever. And that is exactly what Professor Shantanu Chaudhary talked about when he brought up the issue of livelihoods of migrant communities who work with arts and crafts.